My guest today is Ted Thomas. Ted is America's Tax Lien and Tax Deed Authority. Ted is a specialist in teaching advanced tax lien certificate and tax defaulted action processes and concepts to investors and professionals. Industry insiders consider Ted to be America's Tax Lien and Tax Deed Authority. In the past 2 decades, he has pioneered many new techniques and strategies for investors and professionals. Ted, welcome to CREPN Radio.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here, and I hope it's a nice day where you are, because it's a great one here.
No, I was gonna say I can see the sunshine shining down on you there. That's pretty nice. Still a little dark here on the West Coast, but
Wow.
anyway, well, hey, I'm really looking forward to talking with you and learning more about tax liens. And before we do, if you could be so kind as to share a little bit about yourself and your background before we get started.
Okay. Well, first I want to mention, because of technology, I'm not in my studio. I'm actually sitting in my car, and my assistant is holding my iPhone so we could do this interview. So that's how much things have changed. I usually do this with a proper shirt on and a nice background and all that, but I'm just sitting in my Mercedes here, and I'll fill you guys in on the real scoop on tax liens, certificates, and tax defaulted properties. So just quickly about me, because we want this to be about you. My first career was as an airline pilot. I flew for Aloha Airlines in Honolulu, Hawaii. That was a great job, but when I found out how much money you could make in real estate, I said, whoa. So I resigned, and then I started a real estate business, not so much in single-family homes, but in commercial real estate. By that I mean small office buildings, up to 150,000 square feet, and apartments. And at one time in my career, I managed 200 employees, and we had over 4,000 apartment units in Phoenix and Arizona and throughout California. In '86, the markets changed dramatically. And there's a lot of people watching and listening right now that in '86 you were probably just getting born. But at that period, 30 years ago, the markets got way overbuilt. It was the same kind of recession as we had in 2008. Markets came crashing down, and properties lost 60-70% of value. At that point, I decided I only wanted to be investments that are predictable and certain and secure. So I'm almost like an insurance man. I just don't want a lot of risk. So let me tell you about that as we go along in the interview. So now I buy tax lien certificates and tax defaulted properties throughout the United States, and I've pioneered ways where you can sit at your desk and actually buy properties from the local government and buy them for 10 and 20 cents on the dollar. And I've also pioneered ways that you can buy tax certificates and earn 16, 18, 24, all up to 36% interest, and the check comes from the government. So that'll kind of give you a quickie background.
Wow. Well, that's a pretty exciting background there, from airline pilot to real estate and now into tax liens. And then you talk about the percentages you're making on the tax liens, and that sounds really interesting. So we're definitely wanting to hear more about that. And so maybe we could start with this. What is a tax lien? And also, if you could distinguish the difference between a lien and a deed, or you mentioned a certificate there.
That's a perfect place to start. Okay, so every property in the United States, and just so you know, there's about 100 million of those, every property, whether it's a hotel, a commercial building, or residential property, has a tax. The tax is always owed at the local level. By that, I mean the local county for most people. But on the East Coast, there's, in addition to the county, there's also 1,400 municipalities. So those are taxing districts. So those local counties need money to pay for the police, the fire departments, and, of course, the schools. And so all those things are paid for with property taxes. Now, throughout the United States, round numbers now, just use the round number, 2 to 3% of all those properties will go into default every year. So this is a continuing business, and everything I teach is actually 200 years old. The system was created 200 years ago. So let's say I did not make my bill and pay my property tax, which is due once a year. Property taxes are generally 1%. However, in certain communities, they're more than that, where they're very socialistic and they have a lot of taxes to pay. And so if you live in one of those communities, you're paying more than 1%. But anyway, so let's use that 1%. So let's say I lived in a $500,000 house, then 1% of that, the tax would be about $5,000. Now, if I didn't pay that tax and I was here in Florida, and I'll use that as one example, and then I'll use California as the other, so you kind of have a feel for it. In Florida, if I don't pay that, the local government will issue a tax certificate. Now, I'm not in my studio. I'm sitting in my car. So visualize just a piece of paper that comes out of your printer. So it's just a piece of paper like that. It's a tax certificate. And in Florida, those certificates pay up to 18%. Now, the check doesn't come from me or a broker or an insurance dividend. It's none of that. It comes directly from the county. So if you buy that certificate, you can earn up to 18%. Now, that certificate is issued on every property that the people don't pay the tax. Now, just so you know, 98% of the people will ultimately show up and pay the tax. They will ultimately, some will come in 6 months, some a year, some 2 years. They'll pay the tax. So you get your money back on the certificates. So the investment is this. You get your money back, first of all, and you get that high rate of return, and you get your check from the government. So there's no brokers, bankers, or attorneys involved in that. All right, so half of the states will sell tax lien certificate. Perfect investment for little old ladies, for your grandmother, so somebody you don't want to worry about, because you're not going to give money to me or anybody else. Now, the only thing that can happen with a tax certificate is that they didn't pay. Now, if they don't pay, well, you're going to rejoice, because you'll probably do cartwheels. Because if the property owner doesn't pay for the taxes, then you get the property. Now, there's some complexities there. I won't go into now. So with a tax certificate, you either get paid or you get the property. So now you probably have kind of a little basic understanding, certainly more than most people, of tax certificate. So now let me cover the tax deed part of it. I call those tax defaulted property. So let's take California now. I just moved from Florida to California, because California doesn't sell tax certificates. What California says, if you don't pay your tax, they're going to walk over, slap your hand, and say, you didn't pay the tax. We're going to confiscate. Can you imagine? They're going to confiscate the property. They take the property. Now the local government doesn't want any more property. So what they do is they simply sell it back into the market, and they sell it with the starting bid on the starting bid is just the back taxes. So a place like Los Angeles, California, where I've been to that sale many times, they conduct it twice a year. They will have, just in Los Angeles, not the whole state now, just in Los Angeles, will have between 1,500 and 2,000 properties with the starting bid just the back taxes. Now, all properties that come up for sale have no mortgage. The government extinguishes the mortgage, so they have no mortgage. If you buy a tax lien and you get the property, there's no mortgage. If you buy a tax deed, there's no mortgage. So that'll give you some idea of the business. So it's a very lucrative business.
Wait. So if I have a property and I have a mortgage and I don't pay my taxes, you're saying that the mortgage gets wiped out, because is the tax deed or the tax lien, is that in priority over the mortgage?
Excellent question. The tax lien certificate or the government always has the priority lien. And when you buy a tax certificate, you just bought the government's lien. That's all you did. And so that gives you control 100%. This is a complex question, but that's a good answer. Give you a good answer. The government has a tax lien on the property. They sell you their lien. They sell you their lien on the property. Now you control the property. It can't be sold. It can't be mortgaged. It can't be traded. Nothing can happen until you get paid. With a tax certificate, you either get paid or you get the property. There's only two things that can happen.
So just to summarize, make sure I'm understanding, the tax lien or the certificate is in first position. It trumps the mortgage, correct? I mean,
absolutely. The taxes were in place before the mortgage ever was put on the property. That makes it the first lien.
Gotcha.
Yeah, and that's a good question for you to ask. I'm glad you asked, because your clients are having the same struggle. Everybody has learned about real estate. They learn, the first lien on the property is the mortgage. I'm here to tell you, you can go to any title company or any county in the United States, and you'll see that the first lien on that property is the tax certificate.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right, so
that gives you kind of a basics of the two different. So there's two systems in place, and they're in place. The state decides which they want to be. They want to be a taxing state. They can do that, or they can be a tax defaulted property. Either one.
Gotcha. All right. So you mentioned the municipality, like you mentioned Los Angeles. So where do you find these things? Do you just call up the local county authority and say, the tax authority, and say, hey, I'd like to buy some tax liens. Do you have any for sale today, or how do you do this?
Actually, you're right, but you've got to understand that this is a big, big business. Let's take a place like I'm talking to you from Merritt Island, Florida. This is a very small county, and this county, just this little county, will have 17 to 20,000 certificates available. A place like Miami-Dade, Miami County, they will have 85,000 certificates available. So the state of Florida will have 1 million certificates available. Long answer, but you always find it at the local county. It's public information.
All right. So do I call them and say, hey, Brevard County, I'm looking for some tax certificates, or what do you have for sale today? Or
yeah, they wouldn't be able to handle that because there would be too many, and they're not going to describe them to you. So what they'll do is, I guess we should have done this on Skype on video because I'd show you. Normally, what I would do is I'd hold up a big newspaper that's about 2 inches thick,
right.
And the newspaper has no pictures and no stories. It's just thousands and thousands of tax lien certificates.
So is that back there just in the public notices? Is that where you see that kind of stuff?
Sure. Yeah, you could just call the local county and say, look, I want to find out about tax certificates. Where can I find the list? Some counties will say, well, we don't have time to talk to you about that. So call the newspaper and buy the list from the newspaper. And then they just send you a whole newspaper with thousands of them. You can do it. Everything I'm teaching you can do online too. But I mean, you'll be overwhelmed. There'll be so many pages online. You'll be staggered by it.
Gotcha. So let me ask you this. So the county or the city places the lien on the property. You find the list, you go and you buy them. So in the example you used, the $500,000 house, there's a $5,000 tax lien. At what point does that become? Is there a lien placed? Because I mean, you get your tax bill and it's due November or whatever, and November you don't pay it. Is it December you can come in and buy that, or is it usually 90 days, or is there a?
Good point. What the local county will do is the day you did pay your tax, you paid it, and a millisecond later they put another lien on the property because you paid the one for the last year. Now you got another one on the property. So there's always a lien on the property. It's never going away. And so the lien becomes delinquent, and they'll make a list. And when they make the list, you can buy any one of the liens off the list. But they don't try to. The government's the government. They're not going to be aggressive about marketing these things, and that's why people don't know it. The reason you don't know about what I'm talking about, and people that are watching and listening don't know, is because the government only makes the list for their county. So you never would have known if you lived in Los Angeles. You never would have known that my county has the same thing because nobody's going to tell you. You'd have to go do the research. And basically that's what we do. We're in the business of educating people on how to find them, how to deal with them, like if I show you the liens for a county, you're going to find 2,000. There's too many. So we have developed processes where we narrowcast that down to what you could afford. Obviously, there's no sense in you trying to buy a commercial building if you've only got $5,000. Let's go over here and find a piece of vacant land that you could buy, pay the taxes on, or you could get maybe in Indiana, you could get a small house or whatever. So the market varies throughout the countryside. You always start out with how much money do you have to start with, and then go from there. I mean, a big hedge fund will come to us and they'll say, where can we buy, $4 million? And I'll say, all right, why don't you go to West Palm Beach and you can buy, and they just buy the whole sheet. They don't even investigate it. They just buy in mass. But, we're individuals, but we got to make money every time. We can't lose money. So we teach very specific, narrowcast that down to it, which is a little complex for this phone call, but I can demonstrate that to you. I can't on the phone call though.
Gotcha. So when you, in the example like the $5,000 tax lien against the $500,000 home, essentially would that be $5,000? Would that cost the tax lien investor $5,000 to buy plus whatever interest is already earned? Or
no, when you buy the certificate, you buy it today, and then think of it like the clock in 60 minutes. The clock starts ticking.
Right.
So let's say you bought one here in Florida, and the clock is tick, 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 tick. So let's say it ticks out to 1 year. In that 1 year, your interest rate would be 18%. So, and hopefully the person will pay at that point. If they don't pay, it would go into the next year, and in that year you could earn another 18%. Okay, and then at the end of 2 years, well, then something has to happen. Either they pay it, or you can go through the process of taking in the property.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Remember, what you bought is you bought the government's lien. The government is not going to let you. When I say government, I mean the county or municipal government is not going to allow you to use the services of the roads and the libraries and the schools and the hospital. You are not going to use those services for any length of time without paying the local government. So local government says, we don't have any money to pay the school teachers, so we're going to sell all these certificates. And they sell them, so they got money to pay the school teachers. But at the end of that period, after your period, 98% of the people will come in and pay the tax. Believe me. You don't want to lose your house for the back taxes. Nobody does.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. So
it's almost too simple.
no, I was just say it does sound pretty simple. So let me ask you. So, and you can foreclose. I mean, you said like after 2 years, that's kind of the time that you would. Is it considered foreclosure, or do they just surrender the property, or is there a process you have to go through to get the property?
Yeah. Yes, there is a process, and when I say that word foreclosure, we don't use that too much in that. But it really comes from the mortgage industry. But yes, it is a foreclosure. You're going to take the property, but as you probably can recall from your history lessons, all the states weren't formed at the same time, so they all have a little different rule. So a rule in New York will be X, a rule in Texas will be X, and the rule in California will be X. In other words, the foreclosure here in Florida has to take place in 24 months. In Texas, they are ruthless. I mean, they are ruthless. You either pay your taxes. If I buy the certificate today, you better get me paid in 180 days or I got the property. 180 days.
180 days. Wow.
Exactly. And California, they're very liberal state. It's a longer period of time and so on. So each one, now I could just rattle off all these times. I won't do that because nobody's going to remember them anyway.
Right.
I mean, what we teach people to do, if you're an investor like yourself, whatever state you're in, we're going to, first of all, just buy them locally, learn how to do that. But if you want to buy in any state, for example, this year, I'm in Florida. I told you I live in Merritt Island. This year, I bought 7 tax defaulted properties within 100 miles of New York City. And the highest I paid for any property was 22 cents on the dollar. That was the highest. Some of them go for 5 cents, 10 cents.
Wait,
but there's bidding.
22 cents on the dollar of the tax, or 22 cents on the dollar of the property value?
Property value.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. So this is a business. If you're buying tax defaulted property, you can buy them for 5 cents, 10 cents, 20 cents on the dollar. But when I get there, if I'm looking at I don't know if you know what a colonial house is. It's a certain style house, a colonial. All right, so I'm looking at a nice colonial. I'm saying, well, wait a minute. This is what someone wants. It's on 2 acres. It's got 100-year-old oak trees, whatever. If I see that house, I'm not going to get that for 5 cents on the dollar because you're going to be smart enough to get down there and bid 10.
Right.
So you and I might bid back and forth. But if it gets to 20 cents, then I stop. You can have it because I know there's another one tomorrow.
Gotcha.
And I have databases for every county in the United States. I can sit in your office and access every property in the United States.
Wow, that's impressive.
Yeah.
So Ted, do you teach individuals how to do this, or how can people learn more to do
we
this?
teach it individually, but most of our people, we have course materials. They can learn the whole thing online. They can do everything. By the way, all of this can be done online. You can buy and sell online. I do that. I sold 2 properties this year. I bought 7 online. So far, I've sold 2, and I have 2 more coming up for sale this month. And so we buy and sell online. But we use brokers. We use all the people in the community. But you can pretty much stay home and do it. We recommend people go check the property out, fly there, take a good look at it. But if you're doing it, you're starting your own community, it's real easy. But to answer your question, of course, we teach it, and we try to do it in group sessions. I still teach it. I teach a 2-hour class every Thursday night that we broadcast into. We teach people in Singapore to do this, Sydney, Australia, Bangkok, Thailand, United Kingdom. I teach it all over the world because once you learn what I'm going to teach you or what you're learning now, you can do this from your computer. You can buy in it doesn't matter where your computer is. If you're in South Africa, we can teach you to buy in Florida. It doesn't matter where you are. But the rest of the world doesn't understand what we're talking about because this is the only tax system that is this good to the people. When you're in America, a lot of good things work.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
Hey, and if you had to guess, is there an average rate of return and an average hold time that people, if you go buy 10 certificates, Is there a rate of return you'd expect, just as a ballpark, or an average hold time for those 10 properties in order to get your money back?
It's going to be less than 2 years. And all, I don't know of any case that I can tell you. I'm sure there is some because I don't know everything. That you're not always going to get your money back. It'll just depend upon the rate of return. For example, if you bought a certificate today and it paid off tomorrow, you're probably not going to make very much money because it's an annualized return. But in some states, if you buy, they have penalty returns. You could earn 25% in one day. But to answer your question, the average guy is buying certificates and making anywhere from 8 to 16% on his certificates. Our students are going to do better than that because we teach them how to buy after the sale techniques and things like that where there's no bidding. We want to keep our people, we try to give them a competitive advantage by just teaching them how to do this. So you can go to the auctions, they're very exciting, but if you could buy certificates after the auction, there's no bidding. The same with the property. If you go after the auction takes place, and they got properties left, they'll just sell them to you over the counter.
Wow.
But remember, anything I tell you, don't look at it as a hard, fast rule because every state can be different. Now, let me give you an example. I'll give you an inside secret right now. Okay, and 100% of the people don't know this. You'll know it. My students will know it. In Los Angeles, if they're selling the property, the starting bid is the back taxes. So they'll have 1,500 every year, 1,500 to 2,500. So let's say they'll average 2,000 properties they're going to sell. All right, but what if they don't sell it? Now what is the government going to do? Well, believe it or not, they'll have a sale again the next day, and they cut the taxes in half. It was selling for back taxes. It wasn't selling for property value. It was selling for the back tax. If they didn't sell it, they cut the property in half, the tax in half, and they sell it. I have students go there and buy it on the second day.
Sounds
in
like
Michigan,
the day after Christmas sale kind of thing there. That's
actually it's better. It's better than that. Sometimes you go to a place like Michigan. We just had a class in Michigan, and if the property in certain counties the property didn't sell, and they tell you right at the auction, 42 days later they sell it for $100.
Wow, wow. That's impressive.
I don't make the rules. I'm just telling you so there's a lot of those little nuances, and I'm just giving you some examples. And I know you want to get done in 30 minutes, so I don't want to.
No.
I can go on. I can go on for about 4 days, and your audience will go to sleep. We don't want that to happen.
No. Well, this has been highly entertaining and informative, and I appreciate you taking the time to talk with us today.
Sure.
Where can the listeners go to find out more about you and what you teach?
Well, there's some nice free stuff right at pretty simple. Go to tedthomas.com. And there's some free videos where a news reporter is just interviewing me and doing what you did, and they'll see some things here, and then that'll refer them to other longer videos and stuff. We're not pushy or aggressive. Our people all come basically on referrals and all that. And we're just now starting to do it. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I have a boutique firm. Right now I'm doing this from my car. My assistant is holding the telephone up. So all of our staff is qualified as I am. For example, my assistant she's been with me 5 years. Every question you just asked me, she could have answered. My other assistants, some of them are 12 years. They've watched this. They've seen us do it. They've seen people. It's not unusual, and I'm not bragging. It's not unusual for someone to learn this and make a six-figure income.
Wow. That's pretty nice.
Yeah.
Pretty nice.
Yes, exactly.
Got
exactly.
it. Yeah. Well, Ted, I want to say thanks again for taking the time to talk today. I've enjoyed it, and I look forward to doing it again.
All right, so just call us anytime, and you get wild questions, just submit them to us, and if they go to that tedthomas.com, where should they go if they want to ask questions?
tedthomas.com.
Go to Ted Thomas, and then there's an info section there.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. And they can ask questions anytime. So you ask them to you and forward them to us. We'll always answer them. We do questions every morning at 9 o'clock to 9:30. We're happy to do that.
Got it. Well, Ted, thank you again, and please thank your assistant for holding the camera there. That's worked out great. And for our listeners, if you like the show, share it with someone you know so they can hear about how to make money with tax liens and grow their real estate portfolio. Remember, the more you know, the more you grow. That's all we've got this week. Until next time, thanks for listening to Commercial Real Estate Pro Network's CREPN Radio.